Welcome to Merchant Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Area Sales Manager Lynn Williams joins us to give a corn and soybean field report and checks a few ears to calculate yield. We also talk about the latest with armyworms and other yield-robbing factors in the field to be watching for. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes.
Welcome to Merchant Seeds Cup of Joe this week. This week, Ben and Lynn are joining us. And Lynn, we'll start with you. You got some corn in front of you. Talk to us.
Yeah, went out this week and have been doing some pre-harvest yield estimations for some guys. And one of them that really stood out to me this week was this 9746. It's a 114-day hybrid that we have that is very popular, especially here in this Lee County geographic region. The reason we like it so much, it is a very good hybrid that we put on variable dirt that has a little bit of run to it so we can push the population. And this specific one in this field, we go from clay to, I would say, some pretty good prairie type soils. So the individual variable rated this hybrid, and as we got up the hill, we definitely could see the differences in the population. And I guess what we wanted to really highlight with this particular variety, and really in Stein in general, is what we get in girth on the cob. And when we look out this particular one, when I'm doing the yield check, I guess the process behind it is we take the girth times the length times the population, and then we divide that by 9. Some institutions call that the fudge factor, so depending on kernel depth and test weight, we can lower that number to an 8 or a 7. For this instance, we left it at 9 because we're still kind of early. This particular variety, we're definitely going to see some more depth, and we see pretty decent test weight on it as well. So with this particular one, we have 20 around. We were 30 long at a 37 final stand population. So we take that, divided by a factor of 9, we're looking at 246 bushels an acre. It's really exciting on this end of it to get that 20 around because we, with Stein, especially when we're pushing the population, we get these ears, these two in particular. If you would probably go up to your average person that knows a little bit about ag and say this is nearly a 250 bushel ear, they'd probably laugh at you. But what we're getting is we're getting a lot of kernels per square foot. So we're not necessarily flexing in length. We're getting flexing in the rows around. And then we're also getting flex in the depth. This one in particular is kind of interesting. So it's a fasciated ear, meaning that we have an oval cob. And with that has the ability to put on more rows around. And this one, it's just kind of a go-anywhere hybrid for our demographic. We have a lot of success across multiple soil types with it. Overall, I would say it's probably one of the top 5 for my sales area. We push it down in Missouri. We pull the population back just a little bit. We get a decent flex to it as far as length, and the guys down there are really happy with it as well. With that, I also went and was looking at some soybean fields this past week. In particular, we stopped and looked at a Kennedy field, and this year, Kennedys are showing off. It should be pretty obvious looking out in the countryside why it's our number one selling bean. Getting a lot of 4 bean pods on the Kennedy this year. It's showing great tolerance to in my particular area with the amount of rain that we've had. Overall disease package wise, it's phenomenal. We're not seeing much going on in that aspect of it. Seeing a little bit of septoria maybe setting in on the lower levels. Thanks, Ben. But we've got the ability to to really put this in a variety of settings and see it show off. One of the things I have noticed as I'm getting into more fields, we are seeing some bug damage out there, but for the most part, it's not within a large percentage of defoliation. We're still maybe 5%, and there's really no bugs out in the field to really speak of. We're not at the economic threshold to go out and spray it. So if a guy was looking to go out there and do it at this point, it's a revenge kill. So not only is that a revenge kill, it's probably a profit kill as well.
Yeah, revenge doesn't pay the bills.
Looks like the maturity's getting pretty well down on that, isn't it, Lynn?
Yeah, so we went out, actually Ben accompanied me with the grower on Monday. We went and looked at several different varieties. And this one in particular was probably a third milk line on Monday. And as of yesterday, we were probably half. So this heat that we've been experiencing up in this area has definitely pushed the hybrids along. And we're going to start seeing some plants changing pretty darn quick.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to make a couple comments on the corn. 46 isn't a tall hybrid by any means. So it's going to be one of those hybrids that can withstand the wind a little bit, but it's got enough height to get planted on the clays, I would say. There's nothing out there that was too bad. And it also throws a very tall ear. So placement-wise, when Lynn and I were walking, that ear was hitting us on like the 8th leaf.
I'd say, yeah.
8th or 9th leaf. So it's actually fairly high up in there. When we've talked to Harry in the past, and a lot of agronomists will agree, the higher ear set you get on that corn plant usually means that it hasn't seen much stress, and that's the usually higher yielding corn comes out of high ear placement, so it looks very sharp. And what we were also talking about, I read an article that a lot of people are figuring their corn yield estimates fairly wrong, because we are getting products like the Stein that are flexing in depth a lot more. So that number 9 that you use, or the division factor, when I do the math, I do it by 90. You can actually pull that down. 90 is a really conservative number. Mm-hmm. If you want to have a conservative guess when you go through and pull it, use the 9. In many cases, an 8 or a 7 is probably where we're at if we have adequate rain to finish filling Stein ears.
We discussed off air here too as well with this particular one. We still have another ½ inch of flex to go on that kernel. So it's not without realm that fudge factor could definitely be lower than what we're estimating now. But being conservative and I guess setting expectations, we don't want to set expectations too high, and then the combine doesn't quite match. So and I guess with that too, I didn't bring up with when you're going out and checking the ears. I mean, don't go out and find the best ear that you can possibly find. Go out and try to find 3 that are pretty representative of what everything else looks like. So that way you're getting a pretty good estimation. And then I guess the same boat on the other way. Don't find your worst ear and take that and then call your local salesman and complain about it.
Yeah, you brought up insects just a little bit. I think we would be amiss if we didn't talk just a little bit about the armyworm pressure. I know you've had calls on it this week. I went out on a call on Thursday night. Armyworms, for those of you that are further north, we may be able to do something about the problem that we have now, but over the past 7 days, armyworms have marched from the Mid-South all the way through, I think I was talking with Seth, southern Wisconsin is just now starting to see some of them. So hay fields are just getting devastated by armyworm pressure, and it seems to be in the fields that, let's say you went and did some cuttings a week ago or a week and a half ago, and you're waiting on your last round of cutting. The armyworms are attacking the biggest stuff that's right before bud, and they're typically going to go after the alfalfa first, because it's like eating ice cream. It's extremely palatable. Then they're going to go after the orchard grass and the things, and then they wait for the fall panicum and the water grasses, because those aren't quite as appetizing. But I think it's something that we definitely need to keep an eye on. Talking to the individual sales rep that was in southern Illinois, he was telling me that the last time that he'd seen this kind of pressure was in 1988, and the armyworms turned a gravel road black because they were moving out of the hayfield from one side of the road going into the next side. So they can cause us damage earlier in the year on corn and soybeans, but I think we're probably past the super palatable stage of soybeans. So something to definitely keep an eye out. Bifenthrin is going to be a pretty good option for chemistry. I think the labeled rate is 2.3 or 2.8. I'd have to go back and double check, but always follow the label. But the full label rate's like 2.3 ounces, and that'll give you 7 to 10 days of control. So just try to stay ahead of it and scout. And for the fields that you may have one more cutting left on, it might be worth going through and killing what's out there and getting a little residual. So the other thing that I had this week, we were waiting on test results to come back. We talked about stem canker, Phytophthora 3 or 4 weeks ago. In the Mid-South, we had a field of soybeans that was in question. We had test results come back from that. And the first thing that we screened for was soybean cyst nematode, and that field came back positive. For soybean cyst nematode, the count came in at 16 cysts per 100 cc of soil. And this one, United Soils Inc. is the company that they ran the testing through, and it's a little bit different than the Midwest way, because you and I were talking about how Midwest will actually do egg count per 100 cc of soil, and this one actually does cyst count. So we take 16 cysts per 100 cc of soil. There's about 200 to 250 eggs per cyst, female that's laying the eggs there. So that puts our numbers in the 4,000 eggs per 100 cc of soil, and that's a pretty moderate to heavy pressure level. Most of the time we don't worry about stuff when it's in the hundreds or even the early thousands. That 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 up into even like the 15,000, I think is the highest I've ever seen. So they do have some cysts out there working on the plant. United Soils Inc. has a management plan. They say it falls under that they have like a very light level, a medium level of damage, and a super high level. And their management strategy falls in the middle between 11 to 25 cysts. They talk about the field should definitely be moved out of soybeans, probably try to get into a 3 to 6 year rotation, planting non-host crops, and work with soybean varieties that are SCN tolerant. So if there's a way to get a Peking bean in there or a root knot bean that's going to suppress those levels, we want to probably push that direction as well. Is that what the main culprit of what was defoliating the soybeans? Probably not. So we turned in, we also got a report back from University of Illinois talking about what was actually out in that field. And just about like every other field of soybeans out there, there was Septoria brown spot. That always happens with the moisture. Lynn and I see it every year when we're out scouting fields. With a decent amount of moisture in the bottom part of the canopy, we get little brown speckles on the bottom of the leaves. Is that what was defoliating the plant? Probably not. They did find stem canker out in that field. So we were working with a certain level of stem canker and soybean vein necrosis. So when we look at that field and the yellowing margins, I think that stem canker is probably what was causing that. The individual soybean variety that was down there had stem canker tolerances, but we weren't working with multiple fungicides on the seed treatment. That was a downstream treated instance, and I think that with the Mershman Bonus Coated Plus or a multiple fungicide soybean seed treatment probably would have helped us out a little bit more.
And Saltro
to keep the soybean cyst levels down. So just a lot of things to think about when we're in situations like that. I know that's not the only field out there like that. I know there's probably stem canker working on stuff, and stem canker, Phytophthora working on fields out there with the late season rains that we've gotten. And so definitely be looking at what your yield limiting factors are and be learning from them, because we're already working on sales season for 2022. So that's what I had. Turk?
Well, this week we got some rain across the Midwest. Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin all had rain, and anywhere from 6 inches to a quarter inch across the thing. But in average, everybody got a little bit of rain. The drought monitor come out this week. Still 46% of the U.S. is still under severe or moderate drought, and so it'll be interesting to see if next week's drought monitor map shows any improvement. But I think it is going to help these late soybeans if they haven't started to turn yet, and the corn if they haven't started to turn yet. But we're running out of time for it to be able to improve us. I took a trip down through the Boot Hill, Missouri, across Illinois, over toward Louisville, up to Indianapolis and back home, and I seen good-looking fields everywhere on the dry side. Some were rolling on the hills in the southern parts, and even in I was over by Hope, Indiana, and they were telling me that the pivots started running this week for the first time all year. So they need some rain, and I think they did get a little bit, but I don't know how much. But anyway, on the way home, I did see some fields that were getting that golden brown tint to them. Looked like early planted soybeans that were starting to mature. So it's going to start coming here pretty soon, Ben. Pretty quickly.
We had our first combine report Friday morning, and we had some 2.8s in our mid-south region that were yielding extremely well. So I'm not going to put numbers out there, but our Mohawks were showing very nicely in the mid-south. I agree with you. I have seen some beans starting to turn. The guys that are planting super early. So here in West Point, a 3.6 is probably our middle maturity. A 2.6 is considered really early for us. So I have seen some 2.6s, some 2.5s starting to turn the past week and a half here. So I think we could be 3 weeks away from harvest.
Well, it's going to come before we know it. Hopefully everybody's getting their combine ready and getting ready to go, because the opportunity to catch some of this early premium is there if you're ready to rock and roll.
I had Dad order some extra sets of snoots just in case supply issues have a tendency to be if we're in this COVID supply chain issue. So I had Dad order some new snoots yesterday to maybe keep us from being shut down this fall. So be thinking about all those things.
You had a guy with ordering some Green Star stuff for his combine last spring. So that way he's doing some yield testing and wants to obviously get the data off of it, and it's probably not going to make it in time. So that's definitely something that, I mean, you joke about it, but you bring up a great point that some of those high wear premium items that you're going to blow through, like with the peepers and their
snoots,
their destruction, get your hands on it, because it might be difficult.
Well, perfect. We're going to wrap up with a corny joke.
I got a corny joke for you this week. I think you'll appreciate this, Ben. Set of golf clubs walks into a bar. The bartender walks up to the first one and says, "What do you have?" He says, "Nothing. I'm the driver."
So with that,
thank you for watching Cup Joe this week, and look forward to seeing you next week.